We're up to Daf Ayin Amid Bey is the last line. The Gemara continues like this: Amrav Chama Bar Chanina Hakadosh Baruch Hu, when Hakadosh Baruch Hu is Metar Shvatim. That's according to this opinion. When Mashiach comes, Hakadosh Baruch Hu will separate all the mamzerim, and everyone will be clarified. Now that's a good thing, but it creates conflict, because when you're metar shvatim, what it means is you're separating the mamzerim. That means that when Mashiach comes, there'll be families that will sort of be exposed a little bit. So it says the Gemara, Shiftei Shalevi Metar Tchila. The first shevet that Hashem will be metar, will clarify and cleanse, will be the shevet of Levi Shenemar, because the pasuk says V'yashev Mitzaref U'Metar Kesef. Hashem will sit and refine and purify the silver. V'taras b'nei Levi, he'll be metahar Levi. V'zika goysim kezav kekesef, he'll purify them like gold and silver. V'hayu la'Hashem megishay mincha kitzdaka, and they'll be to Hashem. They'll bring karbanos of tzedakah, of righteousness. So you see this pasuk that Hashem will purify those of Levi first. Now again, it sounds like a good thing, but it doesn't mean that the families will be sort of torn apart a little bit. Rabbi Shuman Levi. Rabbi Shuman Levi has a different opinion. Rabbi Shuman Levi's shita, according to most Rishonim, is that we will not separate mamzerim when Mashiach comes. They'll be tahar. They'll be sort of, Hashem will just allow it to be blended in. So he says, kesef mitar mamzerim. Wealth purifies mamzerim. Why? Because in the times, nowadays, why would a mamzer ever marry a regular person, assuming they know that the person's a mamzer? Nowadays, it would be because they hit it off and they had a good date. But in the times of the Gemara, it was money, right? It was money. I'm saying if you're wealthy, and they're like, no. So in a way, the Gemara says wealth is metahar mamzerim. Why? Because they did what was wrong. But what will Hashem do when Mashiach comes? Kivan shenitma nitma. Hakadosh Baruch Hu will basically just say, okay, let's just all, it's fine. And it'll just, So
one sheet that says that there's going to be a separation.
Correct.
And the other sheet that says, okay, mamzer, no separation.
Correct. Meaning Hashem will remove the mamzeris without the people. Whatever impurity mamzeris is will no longer be a problem.
So it'll be a restore.
Correct. So the Gemara says, and the reference to wealth is because why else would a person marry a mamzer? Back then it was wealth. Shenemar v'yoshev mitzaref u'metar kesef, that the silver and gold will be the purifier, meaning that the purifier will be that the mamzer will no longer be a problem, and what caused the mamzeris to be in there was the money, was the silver and gold. So the silver and gold is the purifier itself. Now, how does the end of the pasuk? What does the end of the pasuk mean? V'hayu la'Hashem megishay mincha b'tzedakah. Amar Yitzchak tzedakah asakadosh baruch hu am yisrael shemishpacha shenet mincha. This itself is a tzedakah. It's a kindness from Hashem that once a family has mamzeris, that's it. Meaning, Rabbi Shuman Levi's shita is kivan shenitma nitma. Once mamzeris is mixed into a family, it's sort of like bottle into the family, and that itself is a tzedakah. So that's what Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to be metahar the mamzerim. It means that it's a tzedakah that Hashem does this, because He could separate everybody. The problem is that when Mashiach comes, that's not a time for separation. That's a time for unity, and to start separating Klal Yisrael. And you step, by the way, also the Gemara is going to point out later on. It's a very fantastic. It's a phenomenal, in Lumdis, to understand this concept that once mamzeris is in there, it's in there. Nitma. Once it's mixed in, it's mixed in. But you have to understand. You could find out like Gedolei Yisrael are mamzerim, right? Because it's just their great grandfather. I'm saying, so Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that, because that'll tear apart Klal Yisrael, and therefore kiva nitma.
You sort of have the same concept with Tumah Hudra but Tzibur.
Sort of, yeah. It's an interesting application of it. It's a good point. Gufa. I will analyze this. Amar Rabbi Shmuel. We had this yesterday, but now we're going to analyze this from a halachic perspective. Now, practically nowadays, today, it's very, very hard. I know when people are Masada Kiddushin with Bali Tshuva, it's hard to research, honestly, to find out who's, you try to look into it a little bit, but you're going to find out that 3 generations ago someone converted through conservative gerus. It's going to be very, very difficult to know. But there was a concept where, at least in the times of the Gemara, it's brought on the Shulchan Aruch, there was a concept that you have to investigate it. You have to try to investigate to find out whether they're mamzeris, whether there's goyim, whether there's halalim. There was such a concept. So we said yesterday, we said yesterday that there's 3 categories. There's chutz la'aretz, which is really shvach, a lot of mamzeris, Then you have Eretz Yisrael, getting better, and then Bavel. Bavel was the best because, as Rabbi Lazar said, when Ezra took everyone out, he took all the Psulei Kahal out. So what does it mean that Bavel was better than Eretz Yisrael? For what halachic purpose? So we didn't say this yesterday. Like, what's the halachic ramification? The answer is, if you're someone from Bavel and you're marrying someone from Bavel, you don't have to look into the yichus. But if you're someone from Bavel and you're marrying an Israeli, they would have to investigate. And if an Israeli is marrying someone from France, they would have to investigate weiter. You understand that these tiers are important for checking into yichus. Okay. So the Gemara says, Bimei Rebbe, Bikshu Las is Bavel Yisrael Eretz Yisrael. In the times of Rebbe, I guess the Rabbanim of Eretz Yisrael felt that times have changed, and Eretz Yisrael is now the superior, and they wanted to reverse it. They wanted to make it that Bavel is lower than Eretz Yisrael. I guess that's what they felt, that over time, right, in the times of Rebbe, I guess there was a lot of Torah and Yiddishkeit in Eretz Yisrael, and they wanted to reverse it. They went to Rebbe thinking that Rebbe would sign off, because Rebbe was the Nasi of Eretz Yisrael, but they didn't realize is that Rebbe's family came from Bavel. Right? Rebbe's grandfather was Hillel, was from Bavel. So they asked Rebbe, they wanted to switch it. So he says, Amar Lahen, you're putting thorns in my eyes, because by you switching it, in essence, you're saying that Bavel is worse than Eretz Yisrael. I'm in my blood, I'm a Babylonian, so he wasn't a fan of this. So he says, if you want, he says, go talk to Rav Chanina Bar Chama. He knew Rav Chanina Bar Chama was not going to sign off on this. He didn't want to be the bad guy. So he said, listen, you want to do this change? Talk to Rav Chanina Bar Chama. So, Nitfal Imam Rav Chanina Bar Chama, huh?
He was a Rabbi in Eretz Yisrael?
Rebbe was the Nasi.
No, Rabbi.
Yeah, I guess so. So he said, speak to. So they went to Rav Chanina Bar Chama. Amrlam kach mekublan Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi sham shum aviv. This was mekabel from Rabbi Yosi. Kol haratzos Yisrael Eretz Yisrael 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 Bavel. I was mekabel that Bavel is the highest in Eretz Yisrael. That's it. Okay. Now, huh?
When they come
oh, interesting. Yeah. No, it has a yichus halacha ramifications for sure. So the Gemara says, you're going to like this story. When I did this Gemara yesterday, I was like, Gavin's going to like this. Bimei Rabbi Pinchas, just because it's a very it's like an old school comedy level. Look at Benny Hill music when you hear the story. Bimei Rabbi Pinchas, in the days of Rabbi Pinchas, Bikshu Lasses Bavel Yisrael Eretz Yisrael. They wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to make it that Bavel was worse than Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael was the highest. This is the days of Rabbi Pinchas. So Amar Lehem Lavada. So Pinchas was older, and he said to his servants like this: Kishani Oimishnei Dvarim Beis Hamedrash Tuluni Barisa Verutzu. He says, I'm going to go to the Beis Medrash. I'm going to say two things. When I'm done saying the second thing, you're going to carry me on this stretcher. We're going to run. Because he knew that what he's going to say is not going to be popular. So he said, I'm going to say these two things, and then the second I'm done saying these two things, he was older, he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair, basically. You're pushing me. We're going. We're getting out of here. So what were the two things? The first thing was to confuse them. And then the second thing was what was the first thing he said? So, Amar Lahem, Ein Shchita Loif Min HaTorah. First he said, there's no biblical requirement to shecht a bird. It's his shita. We don't pass in this way, but he felt that there's no requirement on a biblical level to shecht a bird. It's derabbanon, meaning you could sever it in ways that's not technically shchita. There's no requirement to have the laws of shchita by a bird biblically. Again, we don't pass in this way, but that was his shita. So he said that because that was just like, what? Like everyone in the Beis Medrash was like, what? And they were all like distracted by this. Then he got up and he says, Kol haratzos Yisrael Eretz Yisrael Bavel is higher than Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael has more mamzer than Bavel. Bye. And he ran. And they were running after him. Now the reason why they're running after him is because what he was afraid of, what is he afraid of? So he's going to say his halacha, what's the problem? Well, he said they'll be offended. It's not they'll be offended. They're going to want him to prove it. His basic statement is that Eretz Yisrael is not as genealogically pure as Bavel. And they're going to say, pure, prove it. And at some point he'll have to say, okay, that family, mamzer. That family, halal, meaning he'll have to at some point like get down to the nitty gritty, and it's going to cause everyone to start like dissecting. Like, oh, you're saying like, imagine if a rabbi gets up and he says Queens is not as pure as Brooklyn. They're like, really? Well, why do you say that? And he's like, well, that family, that guy's a mamzer, that guy's a halal, that guy's a nisin, that guy's a. You don't want that. So Rabbi Pinchas didn't want to do this. He just said it. Nah, hightailed out of there. Yashvu badku ala gilas. So the truth is, they sat and the people started investigating Eretz Yisrael's genealogical history until it got to a sakana, because they started finding out some of the tougher, thuggy type guys were actually mamzerim, and it was dangerous to reveal that. So they were like, okay, let's just close this book, and we're not going to open it. That's the problem. You start looking into things, and then you start finding out. Imagine you start finding out big Rabbanim are Mamzerim, very influential, wealthy people are Mamzerim. They don't want people to know they're Mamzerim. Maybe they get rid of the people that know about this secret, and it gets dangerous. So they were like, okay, we're just going to close this. It's a shaila. It's a very interesting of, you see from this Gemara that they would like withhold information. It's very interesting. So there are some Rishonim that say that they didn't know exactly who. I mean, you're going to see from this Gemara, let's go a couple more lines, you're going to see like, there was like a concept where it's like, oh, look at the next line. Rabbi Yochanan, hey Chalib Yadeni, Rabbi Yochanan says, I swear that I could tell who's a mamzer and who's not. Aval ma esa, what am I supposed to do? Hashar Gedoyle and Yisrael Nitma. It's affecting Gedoyle Adar. So the shaila is like, it's like he's withholding information. Like what? So I think that some Rishonim say that Rabbi Yochanan didn't know exactly who. I don't want to say a Gadol B'Yisrael, but picture a Gadol B'Yisrael. It's not like he knew that Gadol was a mamzer, but he knew that someone in that family was a mamzer. Maybe it was his wife's sister, his wife's sister. So he didn't know exactly who, but he knew that it's in the mishpacha. So he's not going to reveal it because it's not going to have practical ramification. There's a big difference between you being a mamzer and your wife's sibling being a mamzer, right? It would just come out as saying the Balsam family has mamzeres. Like that's the problem. He didn't want to say that because that's an unfair title. But he knew that there were problems there. But according to some Rishonim, if he knew specifically who, he would taka say, because you got to stop people from marrying mamzeres. According to other Rishonim, no. There's such a concept that once it gets mixed in, bottle. That's a kivin shenitma nitma. That kivin shenitma. The Gemara says, Savala Rav Yitzchak. Why did he withhold the information? Because he follows Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak. Mishpacha shenitma nitma. Once it gets mixed in, it gets mixed in, and we don't isolate it. Meaning this concept of Kiddushin and is not just for when Mashiach comes, that Hashem. It means even nowadays, there's such a concept that when Mamzer is bottle, it's bottle. It's hard to know exactly how this halachic... they bring down, the article has a whole thing on it, they do bring down from the Marsha that even though there's such a concept that it's bottle, like a Yarei Shemayim shouldn't get involved. It's one of those things where it's like bottle regarding others, but a Yarei Shemayim should be... it's very interesting. They do say in the bottom that this is only true because you don't know which specific family member. Meaning, again, like I said, according to some Rishonim, this is only true because you don't know which specific person is a mamzer. You just know there's a mamzer in that mishpacha. Or there's an Eved in that mishpacha, or a Nachri in that mishpacha, you don't know which one. If you talk and know which one, if you know the guy's a mamzer, a married woman has a relations with another man, has a kid, then don't marry the person. But it's very interesting halachically how to figure this out. Amar Rabbi, Rabbi says, I'll prove it to you. Mishpacha Beis HaTrifa Haisa Be'Ever Yarden. There's a family by the name of Beis Trifa. They lived in the Ever Yarden. Vericha ben Sion Bezroya. So this is interesting. This is interesting. We're saying right now that there's a concept that once a family has mamzeres, like Hashem will just let it be. But there's one type of situation where Hashem will get involved when Mashiach comes, where He is going to separate, and that's where someone was unfairly treated. Meaning, the case was Mishpachas Beis HaTrifa Haisa Be'Ever Yarden. There was a family that was known to be tahar. They were not known to be they were tahar. They were tahar, a chashav, and mishpacha. Vericha ben Sion Bezraya. Ben Sion was this thuggy warlord type, and he announced to everyone, no one can marry them because they're mamzerim. They weren't, and it wasn't fair. But that's how everyone treated them. And the opposite, Oida Cheres, but there was another mishpacha that was known to have mamzeris, the Kirva Ben Sion, and Ben Sion's like everyone should marry him. So that's a situation where one family, both these families are being treated unfairly. One being treated better than they should, and one being treated worse. Such as mishpacha Elio Kigayin Elu, for these mishpachas that are treated wrongly, that Elio Balatar Latame Larachilukar, that Elio is going to get involved. Because that's not fair. That if you have a mishpacha that's pure, that's being treated unfairly, Elio, when Mashiach comes, will say, everyone, they're tahar. They're the ones who are tahar.
Statistically, if you went through numbers, if you have a certain percentage within any population...
well, I'll tell you, especially if you bring into the shita we had yesterday, we don't pass in this way, but there's a machlokes tanoim that if a non-Jew has a child with a Jewish woman, the kid's a mamzer. If you add that, then crazy. But America made things a lot worse, to be honest with you, because when you have the conservative movement with their gayrus was not great. It was not acceptable. Not great. It wasn't acceptable. So you had a lot of people that thought they were Jewish that weren't. You had
that's not mamzer.
no, it's goyim. It's goyim. And also the only mamzeres you could have is if someone had an Orthodox marriage but a conservative divorce, which I'm sure happened a lot. That's not a good divorce, and then you'll talk have mamzeres. I'm sure. That's why it's probably better not to analyze. We've been doing this for thousands of years. I'm sure you can have a lot of
I know someone.
Listen, there was a shita. I'm not going to get involved. I don't think anyone's going to watch this. I don't mean this to the person. Actually, hold on one second.
Recording stopped.
So anyway, so the Gemara continues. So the Gemara continues like this. The Gemara says Dafka Eliyahu Hanavi will get involved for these mishpachas because everyone knew that mishpacha was really mamzerim and treated better than they should. That mishpacha were really pure and being treated unfairly. So Eliyahu will get involved because everyone knows what was going on. It was just injustice. But when you have a family that has mamzeris mixed in, let it be. The Gemara continues. Tanu oid acheres haisa v'liratzucham legaloisa. So this is interesting. The Rishonim have a hard time understanding exactly. So you have this mishpacha that mamzeris is mixed in. So we just said, let it go, let it be. Okay, whatever this means. Nitma shenitma. Avol chachamim moisim oisei livneim talmidim pamachas b'shvua v'amilu pamayim b'shvua. The Rabbanim would secretly tell their students who the mamzer was, not to reveal. Once every 7 years, they would tell them. Some say twice every 7 years. So why? This is very interesting because the Rishonim ask a kasha, which is like, if you're going to tell. If you're not going to tell, not tell. So he says this has to do with that sheet that we had before, which is technically we have the concept that let it be. But Yerishamayim shouldn't marry them. So the Rabbanim would secretly whisper to the students once every 7 years, or twice every 7 years, hey, that family, A, B, and C are a problem. Don't tell anybody, but just for yourself. Avoid them in a way that won't publicize it.
Because you can't get rid of the mamzeres.
No, you cannot.
So that it just continues.
There's no way to stop it, so just let it be. It's interesting. The Gemara continues. So we had a shayla of how often would they tell their students about these mamzeres? Once every 7 years or twice every 7 years. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, "Mistabra kimand amar pamachas b'shua." It makes sense once every 7 years. Kiddushin, as the Brisa says, "Hareini nazir loy egal mishpachos, ye nazir loy egal mishpachos." The Brisa says that if a person says, "I'll be a nazir," if I do not reveal the people who are mamzerim, then he should be a nazir and not reveal. What is it? Meaning. I guess it shows from this that it's better not to reveal. So it makes sense that if they're going to reveal it, it's not something that we like. Meaning, if a person says, I have a choice, I'll either be a nazir or reveal the names. What's the halacha be a nazir? Why? Because we don't want you to reveal the names. So it makes sense out of the two options, if they would reveal the names once every 7 years or twice every 7, it makes sense once, because this is not something that we want them to do. So it makes sense that they would do it as little, as infrequently as possible. Amar Abar Chanam Rav Yechanan, Shem ben Arb Oisius, the name Yud Kei Vavke. Chachamim Moisem Moisel Talmidim. The Chachamim give it over to their students. Pamachas b'shvua, v'amila pamayim b'shvua. They give over to their students once every 7 years or twice every 7 years. What do they give over? So Rashi says they give over the meaning of it and how to pronounce it. Marsha says everyone knows how to pronounce it. They're nukudas. I don't think it's so easy to pronounce it. So he says it means the mystical meaning behind it was given over once every 7 years or twice every 7 years. By the way, I mention this whenever these type of Gemaras come up. Yud Kei Vavke is obviously not a name that we pronounce. We pronounce the name Aleph Daled instead of Yud Kei Vavke because outside of the Beis Hamikdash and especially in Galus, we do not pronounce Hashem's name that way. But there are people that attempt to. I heard from Rabbi Reisman, I believe, that he doesn't think it's a proper pronunciation. It's not. They do with a J, but the J witnesses, that religion, they are that name, Jehova. That is an attempt to pronounce Yud Kei Vavke. So it's not something that you should say. People think it's just like they don't realize what it is. It's an attempt to pronounce Yud Kei Vavke. Again, it's not done properly, but it's not something I would even want to try. So the point is they would give it over to their students to pronounce, and the meaning of Yud Kei Vavke once every 7 years or twice every 7 years. So it says the Gemara, it makes sense, it makes sense infrequently, once every 7 years. Why? Because Hashem's name should be hidden. Zeh Shemi La'olam. Now, this is my name forever. But if you notice, the word La'olam is without a vav. Without a vav, it could be read as le'olam. Le'olam means hidden, secluded. Le'olam ksiv. It's written without a vav, so you could pronounce it le'olam, which means to conceal. So Hashem's name is better to conceal. So it makes sense that Rabbanim would not reveal Hashem's name twice every 7 years, but rather once every 7 years. Rava Savar L'Midrash B'Pirka. Rava wanted to give a shir to his students on the name Yud Kei Vavke. Amar le'ahu sab lo lam ksiv, and he says, no, it's not appropriate. Meaning, even when you're revealing it, it should not be done in a public setting. Rav Avina Rami ksiv, this is the famous Gemara. Ravina Rami ksiv, it's one of the most famous Gemaras in all of Shas, that Ravina says is a contradiction. It says, Zeh Shemi, this is my name, which means Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's Hashem's name. But it says, Zeh Zichri, this is a remnants of my name. So is Hashem's name revealed, or is it just like a Zeicher? So what's the answer? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo kashani nichtav ani nikra. My name is not revealed, meaning his Hashem's name in Golus is both his name and it's a remnant his name. How so? Kenichtav ani bi Yud Hey. Hashem's name is written Yud Kei Vav Kei. V'nikra ba'alev dalet. So you look at Hashem's name and say, oh, Zeh Shmi. But the way it's read is Zeh Zichri. By the way, it's a pashut, the simple shot of why we don't read Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Besides for the halachas of it, is Yud Kei Vav Kei means Haya Hayviyah. There's a certain, that Hashem's presence, there's a certain plan that we don't see it. Haya Hayviyah means that you see the whole plan. We're still in the middle of it. So we definitely don't see the plan. We definitely don't see the plan. So we see Aleph Daled. Aleph Daled implies just subjugation, power. It's like you're a servant. You don't see everything, you just do your job. So that's, Hashem's name will be revealed. It doesn't just mean that we'll be able to say his name, we'll be able to see the meaning of all this. The Gemara continues, Tanur Rabbanan. This is interesting. I don't know, Rashi says, as a hakdama to this Gemara, that we don't know the name of Hashem that's 12 letters, and there's a 42-letter name. I thought they did know the name, but okay, maybe how to pronounce it. Apparently, the 12-letter name of Hashem was said during Birchas Kayanim. The Kahanim would say it. I didn't realize this. I'm not sure at what point. I guess by Yud Kei Vav Kei they would also pronounce. I think, according to one opinion, the 12 letter is Yud Kei, Yud Vav Daled, Hey, Yud Hey, and it's that's the 12 letter. Okay, whatever. So they would pronounce it during Birchas Kayanim. So the Gemara says, Tanur Rabbanan B'Rishayna Hayushem ben Shtei Yisrael Hayumayis L'Chol Adam. Originally, everyone knew the 12-letter name of Hashem. As Rashi says, doesn't mean everyone. It means the Kehanim. The Kehanim knew it. Misharabu Apritzim. But when the people that were inappropriate started coming out, who didn't have respect for it, they would only reveal it to the discreet Kehanim. And they would say it in the Beis Hamikdash. They would dafka say it when all the Kehanim were singing. When all the people were singing, they would say it low so that no one would really. So if you know, you know. That type of thing. The Gemara continues. Tanya Amr Rav Tarfon. Rav Tarfon says, "Pamachas alisi acher achi imi leduchen." So Rav Tarfon was a kohen, and he was, I guess, he was a young man when the Beis Hamikdash was still built. Yeah. So Rav Tarfon says, I remember when I was a kid, I went with my uncle to do Birchas Koyanim. V'teisni asni esel kohen gadol, and I listened to the kohen gadol, and he says, "V'shamati shevli Hashem ben imas." And I heard him pronounce the name, the 12-letter name. He sort of mumbled it while everyone else was singing the Kohen Gadol. Amar Rabbi Marav, Shem ben Arbaim b'Shtayim Oisis ein Moisin Oisai Elamisha Tzenua. To get the name, the 42-letter name of Hashem, in order for you to be given over the secret of its meaning and how to pronounce it, you have to be Tzenua, discreet, anav, humble. Oime b'chatzi yamav, you have to be halfway through your life, meaning you have to be an adult, not a child. You have to be an adult. Ve'ena kayas, you can't get angry. Ve'ena mishtaker, you can't get drunk. Ve'ena ma'amar midaisav, you can't be tough. V'chalei deya, and anyone who knows his name Vazarba and is careful with it to properly mashar b'tar and keeps it pure. Of l'mayla, he's beloved in heaven. Ve'nechben lamata, he'll be beloved down below. Ve'masim metal sabrias, people will fear him in a healthy way. Ve'neichel shnei elamim, oilam haza, oilam haba, and he'll have a chelik and oilam haza and oilam haba. Amar Mishmuel Mishmei de Saba. Bavel b'cheskas kshera oimedis. Bavel is genealogically pure. You don't have to check into it. Cheskas kashrus. Right, we said there's 3 tiers. There's Bavel, Eretz Yisrael, and Sha'ar Ratzah. So Bavel is pure. Okay, good. Achivolach masher nifsal, unless you find out there's a problem. Assume good until you know there's a problem. Sha'ar Ratzah, regular chutz la'aretz, which is the lowest, b'cheskas posel in oimedis, is a cheskas posel until achivolach shara, until you look into it and find out that it's kosher. And Eretz Yisrael, Muchsik leposel, if you know there's a problem. Muchsik kosher. If you know that it's okay, it's okay. Now that's a little bit strange, because Bavel you assume good, Chutzar assume bad. What's Eretz Yisrael? So it should be like neutral, but it says if you know there's a problem. If you know it's good, good. What about stam? It doesn't say what's stam. If you say no, it's a problem. That implies stam is okay. But then it says that you know it's good, which implies stam is not okay. So what is Eretz Yisrael?
Seems like Cheskas Kashrus.
It's a little bit.
Cheskas or Idna.
Well, so the Gemara says, well, hagufa kasha, amrit milchzik lepasul pasul, hastama kasher, v'atatani milchzik lekasher kasher stama pasul. Is it stama kasher, stama pasul? So the Gemara answers, amr Rav Huna bar Tachliv mishid Rabbi like kasher. Go to the next page. Kan lasil isha, kan lo hitzi isha miyadai. You know, like this. What's the shaila? If you're in Eretz Yisrael, are we talking about getting married, or if you already got married? If you're getting married, we assume no good. You got to look into it. If you're already married, assume good. Meaning, b'diavad l'chachila, basically. L'chachila, assume no good. Look into it. If you already got married, b'diavad, it's fine. That's the halachic side. Amir Rav Yosef, kol shesi chasei b'Bavel. We said this before, that Bavel had a cheskes kashrus. So the truth is, you don't even have to know the guy who came from Bavel. If he speaks Babylonian fluently, you could assume he came from Bavel. You don't have to look into it. Masin la'isha. But nowadays, there were people who played games. They would just teach themselves Babylonians. They don't have to deal with these problems. Chayshina, and then it's no longer applicable. Zeiri have a kamishtamim meneder Rav Yochanan. It's interesting. Zeiri was avoiding Rav Yochanan. Zeiri was from Bavel. Rav Yochanan was the Rav in Eretz Yisrael. Again, Eretz Yisrael was not as pure as Bavel. Zeiri was avoiding Rav Yochanan because Rav Yochanan wanted Zeiri to marry his sister. But Zeiri didn't want it because he's Babylonian. He has more chashav yichus than Rav Yochanan. Marry my daughter. Rav Yochanan wanted his student Zeiri to marry his daughter. Zeiri didn't want it because Zeiri was from Bavel. Rav Yochanan was from Eretz Yisrael, and he was questioning Rav Yochanan's yichus, which is interesting. Yom Echad have a kazli huh?
They married after Baal Tshuva instead.
Yeah. A sister. I think it was a sister, no? Oh. It was a sister, I got that. I think so. Yom Echad have a kazli b'urcha. One day they were traveling. Yeah. Mati l'urkama demaya. They came across a pool of water. Arke Rav Yochanan katve. Zeiri put Rav Yochanan on his shoulders to carry him across, because he was his Rabbi. So Rav Yochanan, as he's being carried, I'm kosher to be your Rabbi, but I'm not kosher to be your father-in-law. Meaning, like, I'm your Rabbi, but I don't know good yichus. So, my daitach, what's your concern? Meaning, if your concern is that Bavel is more genealogically pure, it's not like Ezra took all of them. Rav Yochanan's opinion is that Ezra didn't take all the mamzerim out, meaning just because it says mamzerim went to Eretz Yisrael, they were still behind also. Meaning he believes that Bavel is not more pure than Eretz Yisrael. So he's saying, well, what are you so firm for? Bavel is the same. Yes, some left, but some stayed. And the Gemara says, Ishtamitze hadam Rav Elazar. Rav Yochanan forgot Rav Elazar's teaching. Like Allah Ezra Bavel achaso kaseilus nakiya va'akol. Rav Yochanan's assumption is that Ezra left genealogically impure people in Bavel. That's not like what Rav Elazar said. Rav Elazar said that he took all of them out. So Rav Yochanan forgot that. You know, it's a pelagadol. Rav Elazar is an Amora. He's a student of Rav Yochanan. So Rav Yochanan felt that Bavel wasn't better than Eretz Yisrael. Whatever. I'm saying this is not Rav Elazar the Tana. This is Rav Elazar the Maris. The Gemara says Rav Yochanan forgot Rav Elazar's teaching that Bavel was more pure. He forgot. He's an Amora. He could argue, and he's his Rebbe. The Marit asked the kasha. I don't know. It's a good kasha. Ula, I guess the Gemara is saying that it was a universally accepted shita that Rav Elazar happened to write down. But the problem is we had yesterday that Abai and Rava disagree with Rav Elazar. Okay. Ula iklo Pumbedisa be Rav Yehuda. Ula went to Pumbedisa, to Rav Yehuda's house. Chazer Rav Yitzchak brother Rav Yehuda the God of Nasav. He saw that Rav Yitzchak, the son of Rav Yehuda, was choosing not to get married. Not like he's dating. Just he refused. So Amar Lei, my time like Kaminsel married to Slebre. So he said to Rav Yehuda, how come you don't marry off your son? Amar Lei, Miadana Mehecha Insav. He says, Yichus, I don't trust anybody. Meaning he was saying, I don't know who to marry off because for Yichus purposes, I don't know who's a mamzer. So Amar Lei, Atu Anon Miadina Mehecha Kasina. So Ula said, listen, no one knows where anybody's from. Right? Even in Bavel, at the end of the day, no one's going to know where anyone's from.
B'nai Yisrael.
Yeah, because you go all the way back. He says, Dilma Mahanech L'Sid, the Pasuk says during the Churban, Nashim B'tzion Inu B'sulas Bar Yehuda, that the women were attacked by the Romans and the Babylonians. Now, if they were attacked by the Romans, right? And they became pregnant with a goyish father. The kid's a mamzer, according to one opinion. So there's mamzeres are going to be in there. Like there's no way you could stop it. There's no abortions, right? That happened. And he said, and if you assume that the child of a goyish attack or a goyish union is not a mamzer, the pasuk also describes in Amos. The pasuk describes those that lie in bed and defile their couches. Now, what is this referring to? The Gemara is going to explain. This is referring to married women who had adultery. There was a problem in Klal Yisrael's history. The Rambam writes. The Rambam says that there's not one kehila in Klal Yisrael until Mashiach comes that will not have a case of an Eish Ish. So the Rambam writes. Every kehila will have one. Kehila doesn't mean a shul. Kehila means a community. Every community will have at least one. That's the Rambam writes. So he's basically saying, Mamzeres is there. Like there's no way to know about it. And we'll see. So what are you going to do? There is an indicator. There are indicators in midos of whether a person has mamzer's blood in him, but he's basically saying you can't be so worried because it's impossible. You're not going to know if 7 generations before you, your great grandmother was married and committed adultery. There you go. You're a mamzer. No way to know. So, and what is this pasuk referring to? That again, the pasuk is saying there's a churban because of defiling their couches. So, Amar Rav Yossi bar Chanina. These are people that walk around to their bathroom naked. Now, meaning it's not appropriate to walk around your house naked. You should wear, it's not sneeze. So that's how he interprets the pasuk. So the Gemara says, Ravo was laughing. He says, because you walk around the house naked, which is not sneeze. So you're telling me that's the cause of the churban? No way. That can't be the pshat of the pasuk. That's yes, it's not an appropriate way to walk around your house. You should walk to the bathroom not dressed, but that's not a reason to have go into gulls. Rather, this is referring to couples that eat together. Swap wives, meaning ish. That's what the pasuk is referring to. So basically, Ula was saying to Rabbi Yehuda, you can marry off your son because what are you going to say? There's no yichus. No one will know about yichus because maybe there were mamzeris everywhere. So what do you indicate? So Amar lehechi navitz. Rabbi Yehuda says, then what am I supposed to do? You're not helping me. Rabbi Yehuda's worried about yichus. He's a little paranoid about yichus. So what's your response? There's mamzeris everywhere. It's like, okay. He's more paranoid now. So he says, so what am I supposed to do? So he says, look at people that are silent. People that are quiet. Now, quiet is specifically, just peaceful in general. Peaceful is a sign of tahara. And specifically if they're peaceful when there's a machlokes. They're not like the fighting type. If you have someone that are more quiet, it's interesting. I never heard this, but there's a famous ma'isa that Rav Chaim Kanievsky used to say over very kizar because it's getting late. The Chazon Ish wanted to marry Rav Elyashiv's daughter married Rav Chaim, married the Stipler's son. Rav Chaim was the Chazon Ish's nephew. Rav Elyashiv wanted to look into the shidduch because Rav Chaim was having a hard time finding a shidduch. He was 26. He was having a hard time because no one wanted to marry a learner at that time. And he had a beard. That was a big turnoff for women at the time. Rav Chaim was having a hard time having a shidduch. So Rav Elyashiv heard about him and he traveled all the way to Bnei Barak from Yerushalayim. It took him like 4 hours. He sat there for the Chazon Ish, and the Maisa goes that they sat and looked at each other for about 30 minutes, didn't say a word. Because both of them, they were quiet. They were quiet people. And then after 30 minutes, he was about to get up and he said, what do you think of the shidduch? And the Chazon Ish says he's the rugged shaver of the dar. And he said, shkach. And he left. But they were quiet. If you ever watch Yasha, if you ever see the Gedolim sometimes when they're with each other, it's crazy awkward. They're quiet. They don't talk quiet. Shtikusa is a sign of tahar. It's from this Gemara. When in Eretz Yisrael, if they wanted to look into your lineage, they would say, if there was a big fight, the first one that's quiet, the first one that's a little more meek and quiet, that's a sign there's no mamzeres. Amri, haimi yuchasu. That's a sign. Amarav, shtikusa the bavel, hani yichusa. The shtik of bavel, that's the yichus. Eini, is this true? But ikla bai beri Rav, shafa chala ubadaklu. I thought bar bei Rav, but Rav went and he investigated it. My lab yichusa, didn't he investigate by like charts? The answer is no, shtikusa. No, he was looking into how quiet they are. Hachi karmele, baduki shaski eloi shaski. The people that walk into a room and everything's about them and they're fighting with everyone and yelling and it's a very over the top. It's not a good sign. Quiet. Silence. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, very interesting. Let's say you have a couple. Again, there was no dating back then, so they were just like arranged marriages. So they're trying to arrange this marriage, and the families are just not getting along, and they're breaking off the shidduch. He says, "Do you want to know why? Shemetz pasal yishbechem, because one of them has mamzeris, and the other family deep down, like the neshamas, don't want to have a shaychus, so that's causing the strife." Sometimes he says that could be the sort that if you have these people that just don't get along, he says maybe the reason why they don't get along is because there's a yichus issue. And your neshama knows that there's mamzeris there, so it just doesn't want to, it's pushing away. They don't want to cling to each other. You see two families in conflict with each other. That means that one of them has a psul with each other, and they don't want to have shaychus, and the neshamas are like pushing away. Okay. Amar Papa Sab Mishidarav. Bavel Bria. Bavel is healthy, meaning genealogically pure. Mishain, which is chutz la'aretz, is misa, is death. They're all mamzerim. Madai chayla. Madai is ill, and Elam is goisus. Elam is a goisus. Now, Madai is a sick city. That means there's a lot of mamzeris, and Elam is goisus. They're dying. What's the difference between sick and dying? Sick means that there's mamzeris there, but it's not majority. Goisus means majority is mamzeris. That's the difference. Most people that are sick get better. Most people that are goyim die. So Elam is roiv mamzeris. Madai is roiv, is miyat mamzeris. Okay, so this next Gemara I'm going to do very, very quickly. There is a chart in Art Scroll. We're saying that Bavel is pure. So where is Bavel proper? What are the landmarks? So it's just going to run through cities. It doesn't have much meaning for us, but there's a map. Art Scroll has a map that might help. Ad Heichani Bavel, where is Bavel? Where does it extend eastward? So Rav Amar ad Nahar Azak, until the Nazak River. Shmuel Amar ad Nahar Yoini, until the river Yoini. This is on the eastern side. Okay. Fine. Weiter. Le'el b'Tigris ad Heicha. How far does it go upstream on the Tigris? Rav Amar ad Bagda v'Avna, until Bagda and Avna. Shmuel Amar ad Mushkani, until the city of Mushkani. Let's keep going. V'loy Mushkani b'chlal. Wait, you're telling me up to Mushkani, but Mushkani is outside of Bavel. V'amar Rav Chiya bar Rabba Amar Shmuel Mushkani arei kigoy liyuchsan. I thought Mushkani is part of Bavel. El ad Mushkani and Mushkani b'chlal means ad v'ad b'chlal of Mushkani. Mushkani is the end by that part of the Tigris. L'tachlis b'diglis ad Heicha. How far does it go downstream of the Tigris? So Amar Rav Shmuel ad Apamia Tata, until the lower Apamia. Okay. Tarti Apamia, there's two Apamias. There's lower Apamia and the upper Apamia. They're right next to each other. Chodek Shera v'chodek Psula. One city is kosher, one city is puzzle. Bein chodek chodek parsa, there's one parsa between the two. It's a couple miles between the two. Kakopti Adadi, and these two cities don't like each other. One city is kosher, one city is puzzle. They don't like each other. They don't have shaykhs with each other. The kabda adadi. I feel you won't even be able to. They won't even borrow like a flame from one city to the next. They won't have any shaykhs with each other. B'simnach the psula hoishtam mishnas. The place and how you'll remember which one is puzzle, which one's kosher, is the place where the language of Mishan is spoken. If they speak the language of Mishan, that's puzzle. Le'el b'tigris ad heicha. How far does it go upstream of the Euphrates? The Euphrates River. So how far does it go upstream? It's on the bottom. Rav Amar at Akra de Tulbakni, until Akra de Tulbakni. Akra de Tulbakni. And Rabbi Shmuel Amar at Gisha de Piparas, until the Euphrates Bridge. No, okay, so I'll just say something. Apparently the Euphrates Bridge nowadays is very, very high up there. So Shmuel's being super lenient. Like he's saying Bavel goes all the way up. But the truth was, in the time of Shmuel, the Euphrates Bridge was lower. So he was being strict. Lower downstream. They moved the Euphrates Bridge. They moved the bridge. But at this point, we assume that the Euphrates Bridge is more northern of Akra de Tulbakne. You see it's right, it's to the north of Akra de Tulbakne on the chart. You see what I'm saying, Gavin? Akra de Tulbakne is there, and then right above it is the Euphrates Bridge, because we assume the Euphrates Bridge is higher, so Shmuel's being more lenient. He's extending the leniency of Bavel further north. The Gemara says, and Rav Yochanan says, Ad Maver de Gizma, until the Gizma crossing. below Akad Bakne. So Layat Abaya v'tem Rav Yosef ad Rav. Abaya used to curse anyone who follows Rav, because Rav is being lenient that Bavel is pure until Akad Bakne. He used to say that's too lenient. So the Gemara says Akasha, ad Rav Layat, ad Shmuel Layat. Why aren't you cursing Shmuel? Shmuel's even more lenient. He's going up to the Euphrates Bridge, which is more north. The answer is Alayat ad Rav v'kol sheken Shmuel. You're right. He cursed Rav and Shmuel. The Gemara says no. Iba Yisema lo'ilam ad Rav Layat, ad Shmuel lo'ilayat. V'girsha de paras l'tata havakoi. The answer is Shmuel is not being more lenient. When he said the Euphrates Bridge, nowadays the Euphrates Bridge is more north, but he was talking in his day. In his day, the Euphrates Bridge was lower, and the Persians moved it up. So Shmuel is actually being more strict. There's no reason to disagree with Shmuel. Nowadays, Shmuel Shita would be more of a leniency, but that's not what Shmuel was talking about. Shmuel was talking about, in his day, the Euphrates Bridge was lower, was more southern than it is today. I will stop here.